What's up, my homies? This is Ryan Winn, welcoming you to an episode of Page and Print, where we explore an original art page and then its printed version as well. In this episode, we'll be looking at Eternity 1 from Valiant Comics. This is pages 4 and 5. Pencils are by Trevor Hairsine, inks are by me, the colors are by David Barron. We'll get a look at just the original art. The location is somewhere out in space. It's a cosmic setting called the Unknown. This is where Divinity and Divinity 2, Abram and Mishka, the Russian pilots from the 60s that went into space, this is where they got their powers. None of this was shown in the original series. This is our first time seeing this. We'll go up here, the top of this book-like tower. I think it's called the God Tower, or the God Platform. It's a giant book with a staircase leading all the way up with the observation tools and instruments at the top. Here we have these giant statue-like fingers that are hands. I think Adam Freeman was calling them finger trees. They rise up and are sort of holding the place together, I guess, if you will. Not really sure about their purpose. And we'll zoom in on here, this little scene here. You can see how tiny these figures are. Up here we have who's called the Observer, who has been murdered. And here we have his little, where is he? This little crony assistant running down the steps. These stairs feel like something out of a nightmare, like I would be running up them in some dream and something would happen and I would go just falling down these steps, just tumbling. So this was a lot of fun. It was really open. There's not a lot of black shapes, so this was really up to David to color and really make use of color in a powerful way. Separate things, create more depth. I did what I could creating depth here. Around areas like this, it was much thinner lines and more broken up as it gets closer to these foreground shapes so that we create some sort of distance there. Then not a lot of heavy blacks or heavy line work on the planets in the background because we want them to drop back into the distance. We will make things like this ship and these closer asteroid shapes and chunks. We'll make them a little more solid. They're closer, we can focus on them more. And then there's these orbs which represent the ships that the Russian cosmonauts came in. I think there's 3 of them. They may be part of their ships or just representative of their ships or inspired by. There does seem to be a lot of spheres in the motif. So I did notice there's a little mistake here. It's always fun to notice. Let's see if I can get in here. So in here I must have whited out the very top of that and then forgot to clean it up. When I went to scan it, it smashed the white out. Or it may have been too soon with the white out. It hadn't totally dried. But I do like, Trev gives me all kinds of juicy little details that I get to noodle away on and make little cool shapes and tubes and stuff. I hope I'm not shaking too much to show that stuff. So anyways, I'll get the color version out here now and we can start exploring that. Set these up like this. We can now look at both. And you can see so much of the separation and depth really comes into play with the colors. David's done a nice job of putting these greens and yellows forward with pinks and purples in the background. Still mixing in some greens in the back, but predominantly the background is warm, and this middle ground is cooler with a little green, still warm with some yellows, and then the very foreground is a little warmer. David does a beautiful job of, let's see, where are we at? David does a beautiful job of these this reflected light on the back, where it could normally be shadowed, but it hints that there's a little bit of ambiance coming from where we are as the viewer. And then he's dropped out the line work on these Kirby Crackle pieces. They look really nice like that, done in gray tone. And those are just, let's see, go back to this one. Those are just ink washes that I did. Nothing fancy. Just, I do the lightest, or I do the darkest first, and then I work my way out. Sometimes I do the other way. It depends. Depends how I'm feeling. Depends how heavy the ink is on the brush. Most of these little details were done with a Hunt 102 nib, or maybe a deleter nib. The stairs and all the tech work is done with nibs, and most of the rest, like the hands and stuff, are done, a lot of it's done with brush. All this rendering is done with brush. The outlines are done with brush. The little figures done with pen. With a nib. Let's go and see how they printed. Valiant Comics tend to print pretty nice. We're in charge of the scanning and everything, so David and I make sure that the production level on our end is good, but they use a nice printer. I should know who it is off the top of my head, but I can't remember right now. See, things print really nice. And then, for those of you process junkies, I print Trevor's page on blank pages. I don't have the trim and bleeds on there. I don't like looking at them, and I kind of know where they are now, and I know how to deal with that stuff enough that it's not that big a deal for me to have it on the boards. That being said, I don't think this original double pager was set up to be scaled properly, so we do miss, there are some chunks that we miss. I think down here you can see there's this chunk of thumb that we're missing. It's not anything integral to the story. It's just you end up doing a bunch of work that falls off the page, but when you do that, you make sure you have enough information. Like here, this rock, we've got this rendering in this chunk that, you know, didn't quite make it. Part of this finger didn't make it, as we can see there. And so I just ink whatever Trevor gives me and then make it fit in Photoshop. And then I seam it together in Photoshop too. In the old days I would cut it so it was perfect, or it would already be cut. The penciler would cut the pages and line them up perfectly and have them taped. Trevor does this digitally, but since I'm printing up his pencils, it makes it a little different. They don't print up perfect, so that's how it goes sometimes. Well, anyways, I'm sure this was nice and boring. This was my first episode of this. I hope to make them more interesting, more exciting, higher quality as we go along. And if you guys have any questions or suggestions, I would love to hear them. I would love to do some live streams where we just talk about pages and art, maybe give you guys some tutorials, tips, lessons, tricks, techniques. We can talk about the industry. Thanks for joining me. This has been Page and Print with Ryan Winn. Thanks, homies. Talk to you later. Bye.